I am Chris Denaro and one of the co-chairs of the Warner's Pond Task Force, and I'm calling this public meeting to order at 5:00. So the first thing I'll do is take a roll call of all the task force members present. So why don't we start online first?
Paul,
Paul, why don't we start with you?
can you hear me? Paul Brown, present.
I think you're muted, Paul.
I'm sorry?
Maybe we'll start with people here.
Figure out, hear them now.
Can folks online hear? Give us a
Liz?
thumbs up if you can hear.
I can hear.
Liz is muted.
Oh, we'll get a thumbs up.
Liz, can you speak?
Yep, my mute is not flashed.
Something here. Okay, that's me.
Yeah, whoever's got the owl. you should turn it off.
Okay, then it must be me, but I thought I couldn't, I think this is gonna cause feedback though.
And I think if it's gotta come from, audio should come from the owl, right? So make sure your audio is.
You do test speaker, can you hear it?
Anybody's the owl.
Someone want to try it now?
And someone speak?
Only the first computer should have audio on for anything in the state. Someone online want to speak?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, good.
Okay, all right, Paul, thank you. Liz,
All right, Liz Morrison, Hal.
okay, and Ann Woodford, non-voting member.
Jeff, is Jeff online too? Did I see Jeff quick?
Yes,
Oh.
Jeff Quick's here.
Sorry, Jeff.
I'm sorry, I'm present. Thank you.
Good.
Chris Denaro,
Bill Kameza, Malcolm Bryant. Bruce Curlis, I'm over it.
Mickey Alani,
Send me vote.
Samiksha Bodhi, Julie okay?
Mark Howell.
Burke Coleman's just staff.
Rachel Freed, CBI.
Toby Berkman, CBI.
And I did get notice that Keith will be joining shortly.
I think he might be there.
Is he? Keith, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Online saying the Zoom link isn't working.
The Zoom link is not working.
Some people are.
Or-
Yeah, I wasn't able to click it. I had to like manually type in the password, the meeting ID and the password to enable to join. It wouldn't click from the PDF for some reason.
Somebody scanned the agenda, so it looks like a link, but it's not.
Oh,
It's okay, the meeting ID and passcode seem to work, so. We just have to do it in the name.
okay. So that, okay, good. All right. Okay. So our main goals for tonight are to understand Warner's Pond dam mechanics and the maintenance issues and whatnot. And also to hear the update regarding Giroux Park, what's happening with there, how that affects our task force recommendations. And then our small work groups will be meeting, and then we'll come back again and share what we've done in each group. Okay? You can see our agenda on the slide for this evening. It's pretty packed, but that's good. And around 7:20, we will open up the meeting to public comment. We'd like to limit that to 2 minutes per person, and then we will adjourn. So this meeting is being recorded and a video link will be noted on the agenda. In a few days. Okay. Do I have everyone received the July 18, 2024 meeting notes? Minutes? Thank you.
Sorry.
Do I have a motion to approve them?
Yes.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Any discussion? Excellent. Minutes are approved. Let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Paul.
You said
No.
aye.
I said aye.
Okay, good.
Okay,
Mark made a motion, Malcolm seconded.
okay, so the minutes are approved as written. Thank you so much. Rachel? You want to?
Sure.
Please?
Yes, so. We had talked about having, the new stormwater, actually, the first thing we should do is we have some new people at the table and guests with us today, so maybe, although you went around and said your names when we did the roll call, perhaps you'd like to just introduce yourself fully.
Hi, I'm Sneeksha Paul, and I am working on, with Public Works in environmental engineer for the Public Works. And it's my third week today.
Veteran.
Hi, so my name is Alan Orsian with Park Corporation. I'm Senior Vice President, where I've been specializing in dam engineering for the close to 25 years now. Been working with various assignments on Warner's Pond Dam since 2012. I've completed two of the regulatory phase 1 inspections on the dam, as well as the quality control review on a third inspection as well.
Thank you. And do we have any other guests?
Yes, we do.
There are a number of town staff who are here.
Yeah.
Yes, town staff, like to.
I'll introduce myself,
Sure.
Alan Cathcart, Director of Public Works.
Steve Dupin Downey. Yeah.
I'm Carrie Lazar, the town manager. Great. The chairs, do you want to, should I continue or you want?
Continue.
So there was a lot of interest from the task force about the mechanics of the dam and how it works. And since the town's stormwater engineer has just started, it seemed very unfair to put that onto her so soon in her tenure. So instead we have Alan Orsi, who's Senior VP from Park Corporation, to talk about how the dam works. I think I will leave it to you to say some more about what your expertise is and then launch into your presentation.
Great, thanks, Rachel. So yeah, as I mentioned before, I've been working with the town on Warner's Pond Dam for a number of years. PAR has done 3 phase 1 inspections of the dam that are required every 5 years. I've participated in 2 of those inspections. I'm reviewed the 3rd inspection. We've also been tasked with completing an emergency action plan for the dam, basically just a plan of action to take in the event that the dam is in compromised condition where a dam failure might occur and potentially impact downstream infrastructure for populations. So when the town asked me to come out, I just put together some quick slides here to hopefully bring everybody together, teach you some of the dam terminology that we use, some of the connotation that we use, so that everybody can be talking apples to apples here and be able to promote conversations as far as what to do with different aspects of maintaining the site. So the first slide here is a overview of the dam. When we're looking at a dam, we're always looking at it from a direction standpoint, upstream. So if you're standing on top of the dam, looking down towards Commonwealth in the downstream direction, upstream is going to be behind you. Downstream is going to be in front of you towards Commonwealth. Left is going to be to your left, and right is going to be to your right. A little bit counterintuitive with this image because my right and my left are reversed. I'm used to talking about it that way. It might be a little bit confusing for you, so I'll try and guide you through that pretty clear here. So starting with the dam embankment itself, that's really just the portions of the dam that retain water. They don't pass any water through them. In the case of Warner's Pond, it is earthen construction. So starting from the east, I guess north is enough here. So starting from image right here is the left abutment. That's where the dam embankment ties into natural topography at the left end of the dam. We have a left embankment section here. It's about 175 foot long earthen dam embankment. riprap on the upstream side, some turf reinforcing mat on the crest and the downstream slope. The downstream toe is primarily within the downstream riverway. We also have a center embankment section. This is the embankment between the primary spillway and the auxiliary spillway. It's about a 75-foot long earthen section. Similar construction to the left embankment, upstream riprap, earthen embankment with TRM over the top and the downstream slope. Again, the downstream toe is tied into the downstream channel or submerged under the downstream channel, downstream water. And finally, as we get to the left side of the image, we have our right abutment. So then moving to the next slide.
Sorry, can we ask?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What is the difference between the left abutment and left embankment?
So
These are right embankment.
yes, also the left of the abutment is where the constructed embankment ties into natural ground. Typically, it's higher than your dam crest. Warner's Pond, the left abutment for some reason is lower than the top of dam or the crest elevation. Well, regardless, it's still the left abutment. Right of the auxiliary spillway, in some cases you could have an embankment over there, but in the case of Warner's Pond, that auxiliary spillway ties right into the right abutment. There's no real embankment over to that side of the space.
Is abutment need or something? Is everything else is earthen? Is the abutment too?
So the abutment is going to depend on the natural geology. So it could be soil, it could be bedrock.
Thank you.
So the next slide is the discharge structures at the spillway. And there are 4 discharge structures at this site. We're going to take a closer look at all these in the next 4 slides. We'll have the starting from go from right to left. So we have at the right end of the dam, picture left, we have the auxiliary spillway. Towards the center of the dam, we have the primary spillway. Connected to the primary spillway or adjacent to the primary spillway is the sluiceway. And then just to the left of the sluiceway, passing through the embankment is the low level outlet. So first moving to the primary spillway. Primary spillway is about a 40-foot wide uncontrolled spillway. I can go to the next slide. So 40-foot wide uncontrolled spillway. Uncontrolled just means that there's no stop lines, no controls, no adjustments on it. And the purpose of this is passing your everyday flows. So what comes in, comes out, goes over the spillway. Spillway itself isn't terribly tall. It's about I think about 2 feet at the right end. Picture left here. Might come up to about 3 or 4 feet towards the left end. Picture right. The second discharge structure is, next slide, is the auxiliary spillway. This is the spillway located at the right abutment. Typically, auxiliary spillways are set a little bit higher than the primary spillway. So during your summer low flow, you might only see flow through your primary and not through your auxiliary. In the case of Warner's Pond, they're actually set at the same elevation. So when one's spilling, the other's going to be spilling, and you should have about the same amount of flow over both of the spillway structures. The next slide is the sluiceway. So the sluiceway at Warner's Pond is about a 5-foot wide bay of stop logs. Typically, when a dam has a sluiceway structure like this, it's intended to allow for drawing down the level of the pond. Say you want to do a winter drawdown to kill off weeds, or if you wanted to promote sediment movement through the reservoir, you could open, or you could take the stop logs out of the sluiceway. Historically, a sluiceway might have been used to supplement flows for water supply purposes downstream, whether that be water or process supply. Which could have been the original intent of having a sluiceway at this site when it was originally constructed. Looking at some stream stats data, USGS stream gauge information, and some back of the envelope calculations. The sluiceway at Warner's doesn't necessarily seem to be big enough to draw down the pond. So looking at those rough numbers, if you take all the stop logs out of that sluiceway, the level of the pond might come down about a foot in your average winter flows, but it does not seem adequately sized to fully drain the pond. Particularly during the winter seasons when you'd be looking to do drawdown for weed control. During, summer months when your base flows are a little bit lower, you could probably drain the pond with it. But again, during those winter months, I don't know if you necessarily have the capacity, and I believe one of your previous consultants working on the dam will come to a similar conclusion on that. The final component or discharge structure at the dam on the next slide is the low level outlet. I've come across the past week or so, a couple of different reported dimensions of this. It's been reported anywhere from a 12 to a 24-inch pipe. It's kind of tough to see in this picture too. The arrow at the image right on the screen is pointing to just the crown of the pipe sticking up above the downstream water elevation. The arrow up at the top of the slope is pointing to the gate valve, which is used to open and close the valve to release water through there. So based upon review, I think that's probably a 24-inch pipe coming through there. And the intent of a low level outlet through your dam is to drain the pond. Similar to the sluiceway. I'm not sure that the low level outlet here is large enough to implement and maintain that kind of drawdown. Again, you might be able to draw down the pond with that low level outlet pipe during summer flow condition, but during a base flow, winter stream flow, it might not be able to maintain the drawdown.
That's a question. So if the sluiceway and this low level outlet pipe are too small effectively to draw down the pond, why would they have been implemented, or why would they have been a different size to enable it to be drawn down?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have asked, previously we had asked for design records from the Office of Dam Safety. There weren't a whole lot of information available. There was a 253 permit, which is the permit that needs to be filed with the Office of Dam Safety whenever you modify or repair a dam. So the application was there, but it was missing the supporting information or any of the narrative components describing, why they were doing certain portions of it. Sometimes with repairs or rehabilitations, depending on the scope of the project, we're really just looking to replace in kind existing features. So if the original dam before 2008, 2007, 2008 had a low level outlet and a sluiceway, they might have just been more replacing the existing features as opposed to trying to provide new components to meet certain operational goals.
I don't think it had a sluiceway before. I'm not sure about the pipe, but that was sluiceway.
So, so I mentioned that we did back of the envelope capital calculations to arrive at that conclusion. A more detailed hydrologic study might find that it can maintain it. I just think that there's still gonna be a limitation there, right? You're taking 40 feet of flow over that spillway, trying to put it into a 5-foot wide sluiceway. Just kind of general geometry. It's not all gonna fit through there very easily.
So, I have a question too. You said that this would not be adequate for the winter. But are most, maybe I misunderstand, most drawdowns take place usually in the fall, right? They're trying to reduce vegetation in the pond. And so you would draw down. So what do you think would be possible to draw down from these two sources? How far down do you think we could get?
It's all going to depend on your base loads, which are constantly running through the river. From what I was seeing on the USGS stream gauge site, I think the number was 70 CFS was the average winter base flow through the river. So that's where I was driving up the potential drawdowns that you get through that sluiceway.
Okay, so you think from opening both of them up, we could draw down what, 2 feet?
Maybe 2 feet.
Maybe 2 feet.
I think every time that it rains or you have a snow melt,
I see.
you're gonna have to go right back up. To the
Okay.
spillway.
All right.
And the GCA, who I think was the designer, didn't have that information that was clear.
They might not being involved at that time. I'd say for sure.
What about trying to use both the pipe and the sluiceway together?
You'll get it a little bit lower, but it's still I'm not terribly familiar with the pond bathymetry. But from a weed control standpoint, really what you need to do is get the water low enough so that where your seed stock is sitting is going to be relatively dry. That's gonna allow the freezing conditions, the frost to penetrate those soils and fill off the weed seeds. And that's where, you know, you need that deep freeze, get that hill in place. So I think the outlets could bring the pond down, they might be able to bring it down for short durations. But I think it's gonna become a very flashy system where whenever you get precipitation or snow melt, it's just gonna come right back up and flood those areas.
Theoretically, typically, how often would you have to drain on, to get rid of the weeds? Is that every other winter, every 5 winters?
So I'm only cursorily familiar with weed management strategies, so I hesitate to answer. Yeah.
So I think Bear Hill Ponds they try to do it every year and they're not always successful, but I think if you can do it every year, that you have better impacts. And
That's right.
Bill, if you have any.
Yeah, I do. They've been drawing down about 3 to 4 feet every year, and for a while, they were only doing it every 5 or 6 years. That was not successful. Now they're trying to do it every year. This isn't Harvard. They would like to draw it down even further, though. They've just put in some large pipes to start doing that. They want to bring it back, bring it down 6 to 8 feet, but it's a big pond. But yeah, but it's annual, that's what it is.
But that would mean that there is no pond in winter.
Oh, no, it's huge. That's a big pond. That's a huge pond. So
No, but it is. We do this
for
once a
us,
year.
minimally, from what I can see from drawings, we need a minimal of 3 feet
Yeah.
to make it useful.
And you would have water remaining in the deep bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe you said this, but what's the level of the sluice way if all the ponds are really?
I wanna say it's.
Relative to
Have that information right on my screen on my computer, obviously. I think it's about 5 foot deep. I wanna say that the bottom of the sluice way is about 5 feet below the spillway elevation. So the spillway crest is elevation 118.77. The invert of the sluice way is 115, so I'm sorry, it's about 3.7 feet.
Task force members have any other questions or things you want to clarify? There's been discussion about 3 feet, 2 feet.
But you will want to talk about maintenance or the separate.
I'm happy to answer questions on maintenance.
Needs of the dam.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it says,
Sure,
mechanics and maintenance.
go ahead.
So, you know, speaking to generalities, we're working with the town right now to try and get a inspection and maintenance program put together for the dam. But in general, for earthen embankments, the rule of thumb is that you want to maintain vegetation on your earthen dam embankments at least twice per year. A couple of reasons for this. Number one is we want to prevent any woody vegetation from developing on the dam embankment. The roots can get into the embankment, loosens things up. If you have a large tree on it, uproots, it's gonna take a big portion of the embankment with it, and you could lead to stability for seepage concerns.
So that's for really trees, bushes and
Yeah.
so on. So, but right now, I think it's mainly grass there. So if grass is growing high, that's not a concern.
So we also recommend so again, we recommend to maintain vegetation twice a year. We want to keep the grass relatively short. Because longer grass and brush is going to promote habitat for burrowing animals. We don't want those animals digging into the embankments.
And then, I saw people on the dam, specifically kids fishing, kids playing. So that seems to be there's some kind of recreational use of the dam. Is that any concern with respect to the dam safety and also B is general liability and how the dam is designed that it can fall into the spillway and how it might have liabilities?
Yeah, so certainly there are a number of public safety concerns whenever you have the public on the dam, whether being allowed or by trespassing. You have fall hazards, you have If your low level outlet is open, it's a impingement hazard where someone gets stuck in the outlet and drown. There's other drowning hazards, so while dams near public recreation areas are. You can do it, but there's a lot of measures and precautions that need to be taken before you really want to start promoting. The safer approach is really just to keep the public away from, particularly the spillways. But there's a number of other site safety hazards that you should consider if you're going to allow public access in the area.
We have public access right now, so if you look at it and you say the safety measures that are there are sufficient, or would you say we need to invest in more safety measures or potentially have to heads up to that?
I think the site as it currently is would use some public safety improvements.
So I have another question regarding maintenance. So,
I was gonna say that we're getting terrible sound.
oh,
So I don't know if we can speak up.
okay,
The folks online are having a hard time hearing.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, so everyone is keep our volumes up.
so my question is, you talked about maintenance and then the grass growing on the dam areas on the left and the right side. And you said, what is a reasonable amount of grass? Because I know that just over the past week, the center portion was just mowed, and actually it was quite high. It was probably a good 4 feet high and very thick, and there's trees growing on it, so I'm wondering if I would suggest that that's probably too high, right? I mean, even if you're sitting looking at it, cutting it 2 or 3 times, it just seems to me that.
Yeah, so the frequency is gonna depend a lot on your seasonal variation, your growing seasons and
Right.
what kind of precipitation we're getting, also the type of vegetation you have on that, or the type of grass you have on the
Right.
embankment. And it's not really detrimental immediately to the dam to have that long grass for short durations, as long as it's maintained frequently enough to discourage the animal penetrations from developing.
And then what about, you talked about trees and things, what about trees on,
Speak loud.
oh, sorry, the, embankments and or, abutments?
So the Massachusetts Office of Dam Safety has a policy on vegetation on trees, and the recommendation there is that all woody vegetation is cleared and maintained clear for a distance of at least 20 feet from the dam and its appurtenant structures. So that'd be the 2 embankment sections I talked about, as well as the spillways. So at the auxiliary spillway, I don't know how familiar you're all with the auxiliary spillway, but at the right side, there's a training wall that extends into the abutment. So your limits of clearing would really, or should really be 20 feet beyond anywhere that wall is.
And are we clear 20 feet, or are there trees and bushes within the 20 feet?
No, clear, maintained grass. Yeah.
There were a couple of questions that people asked. That I wanna, oh, I'm sorry, is there anyone, Keith, go ahead.
Hey there, sorry, can you hear me? I'm having issues with my audio.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So I just wanted to, I don't know if this was addressed, I lost audio for a second, but just some observations. So there is some woody species growing in the main central parts of the dam, despite being cut. I think that's a general concern for the roots of those plants will likely continue to grow and potentially weaken the earthen embankments that make up the dam. So I just wanted to get your comment on the recommendations that are generally made for that, so everyone can hear your answer.
Yes, so Office of Dam Safety's policy kind of draws a line at 6 inches diameter, measured in breast height. If it's larger than 6 inches, Office of Dam Safety typically really pushes for a root removal, stumping and grubbing operation to be completed. As opposed to if it's less than 6 inches, it's more of a maintenance, where you can cut down flush with the ground surface, get rid of the stump, but you don't necessarily need to chase all the roots out of there.
Okay, and then just one follow-up. So on the map you were showing, identifying the abutments. So there are some sections of revetment around the sides of those areas. And the observations will show that there's woody species growing in that as well. And I think there's some confusion as to whether or not those areas are considered part of the dam. So I would like to get your comment on whether those areas should be considered part of the dam and maintained the same way.
Yes, so everywhere from the auxiliary spillway, the center embankment, primary spillway, and that left embankment, that should all be maintained clear.
Alan, could you put that up, or can you see the slide? And I'd like to just provide a little clarity as far as the regular maintenance if it's possible.
Can we just hold you hold your
Sure.
questions to the task force? But I'm not sure that we're gonna take comments here. Are we?
That's it, that's it.
I think we should, you
Okay.
go down.
Yeah,
Okay, so which slide did we want?
The one of
The
the
first one.
shows the.
Primary spillway or this?
It should be that.
This one?
That was.
Okay.
Right, this is the one.
Yeah, and if it's possible, again, Alan Cap, our Director of Public Works, our Highway Grounds. Maintains the dam infrastructure, and there's been some questions, I'll be very brief as far as. Roles, responsibilities, as far as, what Public Works has done in the past and in the recent past, and basically. The area we talk about mowing is the grassy area up here, where there's easy access for equipment. That's been done historically, up to monthly, depending on, staff available resources. Lots of questions have come in over the last, summer. All legitimate as far as what about the woody growth? It was basically an inspection that was done by PAR, last year, I think. It sort of triggered and identified a need for a relatively new staff who were responsible for maintaining it to be aware that woody growth was being, was identified. And I think that area was cleared, and I'm not sure exactly where, but we hired, Merit Tree Services to come in, knock it down. But progressively over the summer, we've gone from sort of maintaining and making sort of a commitment on a monthly basis in this area. There's been question as far as down the embankments, what should the maintenance be? And we're getting clarification literally as we speak, working with PAR on developing an O&M plan, so we memorialize this. The problem is with staff changes, so does institutional knowledge and memory. We want to make sure that doesn't happen again. That did happen over the last 5 years. The question, and we work closely with NRC, is our staff does a lot of maintenance around wetlands. And there's usually a no-fly zone when you're sensitive to how much maintenance. They're very sensitive to that. We're sort of learning as far as the dam structure and responsibilities and obligations they can maintain down to the water's edge where it's appropriate. We've been working with the NRC and Delia on, there's a pocket park here. And even today, we're still trying to understand authority, not that we can't or shouldn't do this work, but who's responsible for saying, yes, you can. And so that's where we're trying to sort of get some clarity on that. I think we agree that, yes, it should be maintained. The question is, it's something just by right or need through dam maintenance, or is it through, a regulatory process? Either way, we sort of recognize there's a need there. We just have to figure out what the process is, but our interest and commitment is to make sure that at a minimum, we memorialize what the O&M plan is. And, the public as well as staff will be clear as far as what the limits of that work would be. So I just wanted to provide that.
thank you.
We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Other questions from task force members?
Yes, I just had a question about, modifying the outlet or the sluice way. How difficult would that be if you were saying maybe the outlet was undersized? If it's just in, an earthen embankment, wouldn't it be relatively simple, to just increase the size of the outlet, or should that oversimplify things?
A little bit, so
I thought it might be.
it's earthen construction, so the excavation to get down to take out that existing pipe and put it in a bigger pipe, relatively straightforward. Being an earthen embankment that holds back water, we have strict requirements as far as how much you have to compact that material when you put it back in. Typically it's 6-inch lift, so up 6 inches at a time, compacting each time to 98% of the maximum density that soil can be compacted to. The larger challenge with many dam projects, though, is the control of water requirement. So that river is going to keep flowing whether we're doing work out there or not. So if you're putting this deep excavation into the embankment, you need a substantial cost bank around the work area. And really on a relatively small project to upsize a conduit through a natural high dam, the majority of your construction cost is probably gonna be in that controlled water environment so that it can be done safely.
Well, that's for the pipe. Is that also for the sluice way too?
You'd still need control water for the sluice way. I think probably the most.
Let's say you want to expand that sluice way over,
Yeah, move that right training wall that divides.
Yes,
the sluice
right.
from that's plausible as well. As far as the extent of that, I would need to look more from a design requirements. I think there's bedrock down there, so you'd probably be bounding your walls right on bedrock, which should make it a little bit easier. You don't need this massive footing or
Right.
cutoff design for there. So it's plausible, as far as the scale of that project, I'm not really sure what it would look like. The other question is how wide would you need that sluice way to be? 10 feet gonna be enough, or you have to go to 20 feet, which is gonna add some additional costs from your control structures that you put in there afterwards.
I'm gonna ask a couple questions back to the task force, just to make sure that you got the information that you wanted. So are there any other questions about the depth of the drawdown to 2 feet, drawdown to? Is that, have you gotten the information that you wanted, or that you can use? I have another type of, good, okay.
I guess I have one. So you mentioned that the sluice way is 3.7 feet below the spillway, but how deep is the low level out?
So I have a invert of that low level outlet, at 113.5. That's the inlet of the pipe. So that's about 2 feet. Sorry, that is about, put and a half lower than the sluice way invert.
There was also a question, I think, Sven, you asked about safety issues with the dam. And I think, Alan, you said that there would need to be some improvements. Does anyone want to follow up on that course of thinking, or is that not relevant to where you're going?
I mean, I don't think it's about whether we remove the dam or not.
Okay.
I think that
The
it's
question of the
just,
town for sure.
I would say that it's for the subcommittee on dredging, which is good, assumes that that stays. Is it in the budget, something that needs to be put in for that purpose on maintaining the safety and limit the liability for the town there.
Anything else?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
so I had a question regarding the, what's it called, the auxiliary spillway. So that is, it's relatively kind of tempered, it's not a real steep spillway. Is that an area where we could, if need be, put in like some sort of fish passage? Or ladder type thing?
So I think there's a number of opportunities out there that I could look at from a fish passion standpoint, and I think the decisions probably come more towards, where the primary spillway, the auxiliary spillway flows meet. Fish are gonna go where the flow is more attractive to them, so while that auxiliary spillway is relatively, I could start off, I'm not a biologist, so I'm not an expert, but I'll give you my opinion on it.
Right.
Well, my initial reaction to that would be the fish would come up, they'd meet the riprap channel coming out of the auxiliary spillway, decide they don't like that. They would go congregate at the primary spillway in that deeper pool there. And then they'd be looking to migrate up from that location. So from a fish movement standpoint, it might be preferred to put a fish passage at the primary spillway. But that probably takes some additional hydraulic modeling to figure out exactly how water moves out here migrate at the time of year.
Any other questions from the task force or comments from on staff? Okay. That's it then. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thank you so much, Alan. Wealth of information. Thank you.
Yeah, I
Appreciate it, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna move to our next agenda item. That's our co-chair. So we wanted to spend some time, discussing Giroux Park. And we have Carrie LaFleur here, so we're grateful, very grateful for her. But just to frame this, right, the task force has expressed some interest in hearing about more about the status and the future of Giroux. We spoke about this as a planning team, and it was clear to us that this issue really relates to the work of all of the work groups, right? You all are thinking about this, you all need information on it, or benefit from information on it, and just FYI, we'll share kind of the topics that we went over, we surveyed you on between meetings to get your interest. This was very high. People really wanted to hear about Giroux. So we had an opportunity to get Carrie here today. We're very happy for that. And essentially, you know, I think we're gonna just give Carrie an opportunity to share some key points on Giroux, the status, the future. And then we also have Steve Jukran. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Yeah, I'm available for questions. And we'll take it from there. So the goal here really is for you to get as much information as we can, to task force members that will be useful for you in your preparation for proposals in the work groups. And so we're hopeful we can at least advance the ball on that somewhat today. So
Should I sit or stand? Maybe if I
do
sit.
you want to come up and kind of come up here? Yeah, we can do some.
I do not have any slides. But thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today to talk about Giroux Park. We do have a project page that is up on the website. It's a new project page that we had intended to put up last month, but it's up this month. So in terms of Giroux Park, the project that you see that is almost under construction, which includes the pavilion and the restrooms and the paths, the invasives removal work, and eventually some benches. That is the project. That is the one and only project that the town has funded for Giroux Park at this point in time. I do know that we went through maybe a master planning process or a visioning process to identify all of the different areas of interest and work opportunities people might like to see at that park. But at this point in time, there's only the one project that is funded, and that is really the only project that is in our capital improvement plan or our 10-year capital planning process. It doesn't mean that there can't be additional work, but there is not a phase 2 project at this point in time. I think I saw some hands go up. Or, no.
So, yeah, I mean, we can open it up for questions. I just kind of having checked in with the planning team on this a little bit. Is it possible to share a little bit about sort of the extent that there's not, you know, money set aside for this for phase 2? What are the considerations that are kind of motivating that stance?
So, you know, I would say the change in our staff, as Alan mentioned, and you probably know from just being plugged into town, we've had a lot of changes in town staff. And I think one of our main champions from a staff perspective for this project is no longer with us. So I do think that has something to do with the fact that we don't have additional projects yet planned at Giroux Park. When the project or the property was acquired, it was, it does say, if you look back at the town meeting vote, for recreational purposes, and it says comma, including active recreation. But I think the intent right now is passive recreation, though it could be moved over to a more active recreation park or facility at some point in time, if that's what the community is interested in. That address.
Yeah, thank you. Let's open it up. I see Vicky, and then I see your hand as well.
Yeah, so I have thousands of questions, but we'll try to limit them here today, because I was at that original meeting when we talked about active recreation.
Yes.
And we were so excited as a community to vote for that project, you know, as something connected to the pond and a very active new amenity for West Concord. And so we feel like there's been a few losses along the way, you know, this is like kind of a feeling. And I know it's been very hard, and so, but I'd love some updates on how we voted for active connection to the pond with some swimming and beach, and how we got here without voting differently. So that's one. Two is timing, because we haven't gotten sort of regular updates. It feels like I've heard this month, next month, probably 6 times, but we don't get a monthly update on the status. Even if the status, very honestly, we're working on it, it's extended another few months. This is what's happening. It would be great for the community to feel like transparency of communication, to say, we know we said January, here's what's going on with the contractor. It's looking like June. We apologize for these delays, but we're not getting anything. It feels a little wiggy. So I just want to put that out to you. And it would be nicer to have more transparency on what you're going through. We know you're going through a lot with it. We want to know what that is. Can we pause?
I'm gonna lose track of.
Sure.
Questions. So in terms of the active versus passive, I think one other key point is that about the same time that the town was considering acquiring the Giroux property, the White Pond acquisition came on the horizon. And I can't remember the exact timing, but I can tell you, I distinctly remember a conversation with former town manager Chris Whalen, where he was really struggling with, he didn't know that the White Pond opportunity was going to be presented, and we were far enough into Giroux that we had made a commitment, and he was trying to understand, I think from a financial perspective, how are we going to make both of these things happen? So I do think that the White Pond, the town's interest in White Pond is very active recreation. Right? I do think that had to have some impact on what happened at White Pond versus Giroux. Right, wrong, or indifferent, I do think that impacted the conversation. When you say we voted for active, can you help me understand what you're referring to?
The vote I remember being voted for was we're going to buy this land, and where it's going to look like this drawing. There were meetings where it said, this is what it's gonna look like. We have the potential for a beach and swimming, and it's gonna be an active thing. And I was like, vote yes. I'm voting yes for that project.
And so
we didn't know we were gonna be compared to White Pond or been put up against White Pond. We were like, this is a commitment to this land. We're voting a certain amount of money to do what we all saw. And it was connected to the pond, which is why we're talking about it here. It was gonna be some sort of connection to the pond that made access to the pond much easier. Views of the pond much better. And it's like, wow, this is such an incredible resource. I voted yes to spend that money.
So when you say at town meeting, you're saying when you were at town meeting, okay. And I don't mean to compare the two projects. I'm trying to frame what I think was just kind of going on at the time. So the town meeting voted to purchase the property, dedicate money to purchase the property. Town meeting voted for a project, the project that's under construction, and you can call that phase 1. I remember thinking phase 1 of a multi-phased project. There's no phase 2, if you will, that has been put forward. So it's not funded. It doesn't mean it can't be put forward. It just hasn't. So visions take shape through conversations and further shape through town meeting funding commitments. So we don't have another one. We have town meeting every year. Every year we update our capital improvement plan for a 10-year period. We have a lot of wants, needs. So additional funding for capital, it's going to be difficult. It's not impossible, but it is going to be difficult given all of the
all of the needs we have with roads and other public works infrastructure, the big building needs we have between public safety and public works. So I think you
I'll
still.
just, I'll do one more and then, yeah, it just feels like some of the decisions that are being made on phase one or have been made now block phase two capabilities. It blocks access to the pond. It blocks views of the pond. It blocks handicap access to the water's edge. It blocks. The dam removal group has come up with some, forward-thinking ideas that will have to undo spending that was just put in place on phase one. It just feels to me that we should have had a conversation about those things that were on that original plan and how to facilitate some of those things. All we would have had to do was leave out a few trees or leave out or maybe make one walkway go this way instead of that way to allow phase two without taking out $50,000 worth of spending or whatever it is. It just feels like we are going to, in order to do phase two, which is going to be harder to convince everyone, we are going to have to undo spending on phase one. That is frustrating.
Yeah,
to watch.
so I don't mean this to be argumentative at all.
No.
But there's,
Can handle it.
and I'm not an expert on the Wetlands Protection Act and mitigation. But mitigation was required for that project and the mitigation was approved through an order of conditions. And so I'm not, additional development, I don't think it's as easy as taking out mitigation to put something else in. And I think I will leave it at that because otherwise I'll be underwater over my head.
So yeah, I think we have, well, Sven was in the queue, we have Keith and I also see some other hands online, so we'll make sure we get folks.
Paul.
Yeah, Paul. So Sven, go ahead and then we'll go to online folks.
Yeah, though, she covered a lot of my questions, but in the end, what I sense there seems to be some kind of people remember some expectation setting in that process around the road park. And I'm not 100% sure if I get the pieces of the puzzle together, and at least seems to be predate me moving to Concord. I think generally perhaps, I don't know, would task force would be good to see what actually the town approval at town meeting, what was there at the town meeting and what the presentation is. To actually recognize what was the expectation set. Not to say, oh, it was that this or that, but in the potential opportunities or scenarios we are discussing, is there opportunity if some expectation was set that was not fulfilled? Is there a way in the one or the other option to fulfill some of the expectations that were set? So this is more kind of providing us some records about what was actually voted. And I assume there were two votes, the acquisition of the land and the other one was phase one. And what kind of presentation that belonged. I would say that would be helpful for us. Because that connects the expectation in the community to the potential outcome of it.
Yeah, I think we can take that on, to get a hold of that.
So if you go to the new project page, that is
The
there,
Bureau page.
yeah, there is.
I checked that before I came to the meeting and it's not up yet. I just.
I think it's gonna take a bit to refresh because it's, I'm not gonna talk technical. It's there. I saw it, I have it, so hopefully you can access it later this evening or tomorrow. But there is a summary that shows sources and uses, I would call it, that shows all of the town meeting appropriations. And this is sorted by contract, so it will have the contractor that did the restroom, the contractor that did the rest of the work, GPI, who is the architect and the construction manager. You can see all of that. If you go to, and the town meeting votes are there, so it'll say which town meeting, which article. You can go to the town meeting page. You can go to, there was a vote in 2022, Article 10, 2022. You can go to the 2022 annual town meeting page. You can see the presentation that was made at public hearing, at town meeting. audios or videos of both the town meeting votes, the town meeting warrant, that is all.
And the 2022 is phase one or the transition or both?
2022 was the last,
The phase
Was the-
one,
no, it was the very last supplemental appropriation. The other, the ones were before that.
But it
I
sounds
mean,
like
I can
you guys
I can look it up if you
Why
want.
don't,
I guess.
so maybe
you
we
take
can
this
circle up and come back with kind of a package of
Okay.
the relevant stuff for the task force.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So why don't we go to Keith and then Charlie will be next. Go ahead, Chief.
So just a couple or three questions here. Or observation statements. So looking at the dredge plan that we've, going back, we've done this as a group. There's a north dredge area and a south dredge area. I think it's just really important to call out the north dredge area is right at Giroux Park on the shoreline of the right there. So that seems to line up with initial plans for a swimming beach. And so that adds to some of the confusion that people in town have had as to why that suddenly disappeared. And then also Carrie, you're talking about there's no identified phase 2 right now, but I'm wondering, can you help explain to people what it would take to establish a legitimate desire from the community to have a phase 2? Because I think a lot of people have been asking why there isn't one, but maybe that's not registering with the town administration that there is a desire to have phase 2, and how can we get a plan developed and who can show up to help form that plan?
Yeah, so how do we get a phase 2? Our main sources of funding for these types of capital projects are through Community Preservation Act and the town's capital plan. Both of those, you may be familiar, the CPC committee, they're taking applications through September 13, I believe is the deadline. The town's capital improvement planning process starts a little bit after that. And right now we're nailing those dates down because we tie everything to annual town meeting, and annual town meeting in 2025 is much later because of the 250th celebration. So we don't have our timetable yet established for the next 10-year capital plan. I will say it opens every year. And every year things get shuffled around, and it is not uncommon for something to come in for the first time and be plugged into year 1. So the timing right now, it seems a little premature to be putting forward a capital project, because I think we need to understand what's happening here first. But when the time is right, projects either come from staff or committees. And this type of project could come from, it could come from the town manager's office, it could come from recreation, it could come from the recreation commission. There are a number of boards and committees it could come from. The best way to get something funded is to have a coalition, right? So you want to bring as many boards and committees and staff together to agree on a concept that helps demonstrate a collaborative effort and wide, broader interest, and those would be the best ways to bring a project forward.
Okay, and thank you. So I have one last question. So just picking up on what Vicky was saying, there is just some confusion as to why so many trees were planted there in the name of mitigation, when there really wasn't a lot of development in the wetland or even in the buffer zone. So I'm wondering, if you're not able to address that, is it possible to have, say, Delia address why the mitigation plan came out the way that it was and why so many trees were selected to be planted there?
I'm happy to respond to that.
Yeah.
Yes, so, for any projects that has hardscape construction in the 100-foot buffer zone, the commission has a requirement of 1-to-1 mitigation. And there's, in the 50-foot no build zone, there's also a much higher requirement that it's a 10-to-1 mitigation requirement. So that's can be modified if you work closer to the wetland. So it goes down to 5-to-1 if you do your mitigation in the 25-foot no disturb zone. And then on top of that, for any trees that are removed, there's a 1-to-1 requirement for tree replacement. So there was, we, for every project that comes in front of the commission, we require that people provide a chart that shows the area of hardscape construction in each of the jurisdictional areas. And then there is a 1-to-1 or 10-to-1 or 5-to-1 mitigation for those impacts within jurisdictional resource areas. So does that answer your
So-
question, Keith?
So does that mean there were 10 trees removed, requiring 100 trees to be replanted?
So it was a combination of some of the path work is in the 100-foot and some, if I recall, is in the 50-foot. So that drives up the mitigation requirements. It's not just a, 1-to-1 for trees removed. It is the additional of hardscape construction within jurisdictional areas.
So how do you equate 1-to-1 with a hardscape with a tree? I guess I don't understand that connection.
Right, so we do it based on, if you have 100 square feet of impact in the 100-foot buffer zone, you are required to replace an area of 100 square feet. And if it was that number, we calculate it by trees planted on center. So for trees, it's a 10-foot on center. And so that is basically 100 square feet. So you have to plant one tree for 100 square feet of impact in the 100-foot buffer zone. If you're in the 50, that number changes. And if you're, so it's. Does that help clarify?
No,
No,
because it's merit.
Yeah, let's hear from Keith.
Forgive me.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering, is this written somewhere? Is this like an official stance that we can read and understand better on our own?
Yep, so there, if you go to the wetlands permitting page. Under the natural resources division or commission, I can't remember which page it's under, but if you go to the natural resources division on the left, there's a wetlands. Permitting page, and it has our submittal requirements, it has the 50-foot no build zone. Policy, and any review of any minutes of any NRC meeting. Will make it clear that this is required for every project.
If I ask just a follow-up to that, is that how is it determined where the trees are placed?
Right, so they have to be, if they're taken out of the 100-foot buffer zone or the work is in the 100-foot buffer zone. The mitigation has to be within the 100-foot, and there's more value to having it be closer to the pond. But it certainly doesn't, there was no intention of planting a screening row of trees. I mean, we look for a suite of, trees and shrubs and herbaceous plantings. So, and I do recall that when this project was permitted, that the only phase 2. So my recollection, and I would have to go back to confirm, but my recollection is that the only phase 2 improvements that we were aware of was the fishing dock, or the boat launch and fishing dock, and none of the mitigation was proposed in that area.
It is unfortunate because when you do go there, it feels like there's a wall of trees and it is blocking the view of the pond.
Right, so just to also be aware that, the NRC reviews plans that are proposed. It's not like, they say, put your trees here. It is a plan that is submitted, it is reviewed, and as long as it meets the mitigation requirements. And these are public meetings, there were several on this project, and, it wasn't something that, even came up as part of the discussion at that time, but, that would have been the best time during the public process for somebody to say, wait, I'm concerned about that. Because, I don't recall it ever being part of the conversation. But, I think Carrie has suggested in an email that many people have seen, just basically responding to some of these questions. And suggesting that if there are concerns about how this project is, looking at this point, there may be opportunities to fine tune it that make it, a satisfying project for everybody. And that obviously is the intent of town staff, and certainly, and boards and committees that, serve voluntarily to make Concord a better place.
Let's go to Paul online. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, hi. So I want to get back to the funding question very briefly. So Carrie, I understand, and I think you teed up the answer to the question by mentioning the funding sources, but I think we appreciate there is no existing capital budgeting for this project, but you did mention the CPC, the Community Preservation Act funds, as another source of funds, and indeed, I think about $800,000 of CPC funds have gone into the development of the park to date. So I presume, since you mentioned it's feasible that a CPC application could address some aspects of the quote unquote next phases of the project. But my question is, as the owner of the property, Carrie, do you have any problems in entertaining a CPC application for additional enhancements of the of Giroux in this next cycle?
So I think my concern is the timing. While this question is still outstanding of the future of the dam and what the pond might look like, depending on the decision, it's difficult, given all of the needs, to say that this is the time to put that application forward. So that's my concern. And often a lot of these projects, CPC is looking for the town to respond, particularly if it's the start of something. Is the town going to come in and be able to support the additional funding? The next piece to that, and I'll be brief, is just our ability to maintain what is there. So the more development that happens, the more person power needed to maintain that property. And I am not going out on a limb here when I say Public Works is the most underfunded department in the town of Concord by far. And so that would be the concern.
Yeah. So I think the answer to the question is maybe, but I won't put you on but I won't put you on the spot. But I will say that when you look at the dredge area of the pond, or what would remain if the dam were removed, or if nothing were done at all at the pond, I think there's certain enhancements to Giroux which cut across all possible options, whether it's dredging, dam removal, or doing nothing. I think access to the pond and further enhancement to the pond is not really limited by those options right now. But that's something that the task force needs to discuss, and I think you and Alan and others need to be kind of hear more about this. So I'll just leave it at that.
I agree. I think that, there was a lot of discussion, or maybe not a lot of discussion, but there was discussion about the fact that there was water access at Giroux Park. But there isn't any water access to Giroux from Giroux Park. So even if somebody wanted to put in their own canoe or whatever from there, there's no way for them to do that right now.
There's actually no boat launch anywhere.
No,
We lost more access.
nothing. And you're looking over this beautiful pond, wouldn't it be nice to have some sort of access? And yes, we as a task force need to look at our three. And I hope that with any of those options that we come up with, that there would be opportunity for pond access. So.
Well, just to repeat myself, any of those options, still Giroux maintains a nexus with the water, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. And people are gonna find their way to the water no matter what. I mean, if you don't do anything, there's gonna be access, but may not be where we want it.
Well, we'd like to make it accessible. to all people.
Absolutely.
Handicap.
Yeah, for disabilities, yeah.
So just want to check in, any further questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, Anne, go ahead.
Well, in our subgroup, we've talked a lot about how, well, I guess when you're talking about town meeting votes, are you also talking about the 1961 town meeting vote for Warner's Pond itself? Because in our subgroup, we've talked about how, Warner's Pond itself is under natural resources, and it was donated to the town or purchased by the town for conservation purposes, whereas Duro was purchased for a different purpose. And that was recreation. And so how do you merge those two? Because they were acquired for two very different purposes. And our initial vote in 1961 was a part of this innovative, Wetlands Protection Act, business in the 1960s.
So just for me to understand this, so in 61. That was voted then for wetland protection.
The 61, the acquisition of Warner
Warner
Pond,
Pond,
that 77-acre parcel was for conservation purposes.
But it was a pond.
Yeah, but I think it's problem he's referring to now, if you take that out. And that's what our stuff is to think about. You take the out and the other sides, we have wetlands. Then can we actually use the wetland for recreation purposes? If
So-
it was
so we
for
have-
conservation.
Right, I mean, I think that's a great question, and, we have a lot of conservation parcels that have wetlands on them. We have bog bridges.
Yeah.
We have seasonal trails. But, I mean, so there's a difference between active recreation, like the ball fields.
Yeah,
And
but-
passive recreation, like, like canoeing, like you can do on Warner's now, and there's
So
passive
that
recreation.
would be still possible.
Yeah.
Even though it's for conservation, not for recreation.
So the way that we view conservation parcels is that they are acquired for conservation purposes, but passive recreation is acceptable unless they interfere with the conservation values. So for example, if we had a trail or we had a parcel that had a state listed rare plant, and the trail went right through it, and we discovered that there was this rare plant population, we would either, we would remove the trail. If it was something where you couldn't take the impact away from the ecological value, then, maybe that's a parcel that then is not available for passive recreation purposes.
It's swimming passive.
Is swimming, that's a good question. So swimming, I mean, active recreation usually requires some sort of structure associated with it, like a playground has swing sets and, slides.
Okay.
A ball field has, backstops and, batting cages.
So as long as you're not doing Olympic swimming pool in.
You didn't put a pool, yeah, right, that's maybe a good distinction, is that in a pool, it's gonna be active recreation, but in a pond, passive. I mean, I'd have to give that a little more thought, but I do think structure is active and no structure is passive.
So
That's a good
Lily
thought.
Beach is the structure or not structure?
No, I wouldn't say that's a structure.
Okay.
I have a question about that, actually ties in. If I remember correctly, the dredging plan, the original dredging plan from 2018. The north dredging area was, schematics was done with the beach in mind.
Yeah.
There's a picture of a beach in that drawing.
Right,
So in fact, that was part of the dredging area that was
Well,
looked at
it
for
was-
2018.
there was sand there, but
Yeah.
it was never vetted, in terms
Oh,
of.
I know,
It was water access. And
Right.
whether it was going to be, I mean, that whole discussion evolved with the White Ponds. But the NRC never saw that as, are we putting in a swim?
no,
beach?
we weren't, but at least the
Right.
dredging was being
It was in
anticipated.
conflict that you could have, some deepened area, and it was initially identified there because of the.
Yeah, of the possibility of the
Of the
beach.
possibility of.
But it had, as you're saying, it had some sort of
Yeah,
beige thing on the drawing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was water access, where we now have 30 or 40 trees. I think that's the question of how did we get from a water access to a water trees in that same zone?
I looked actually at the place.
But I think I've looked at, the preliminary concept was presented in October of 2018. And the area that is sort of beige and beach-like is an area that if you go back through the area photographs, where you discover has been wooded for 40, 50 years. It isn't even where these new trees are.
So
So
that's right.
in order, I don't think. Although I think that image is seared in all of our minds, no doubt, but I think if we're really honest about it, it never really got into an active planning or construction or, I'm not sure was ever really vetted to see whether, could you in fact go in there and clear all those streets, because clearly that's within the 25-foot buffer zone of a conservation area, and I think we would have had a very active discussion as a community about what are we really doing to the edge of that resource. So even though I think aspirationally it was presented in 2018, I think we also need to be realistic about the fact that White Pond came along with a ready-made beach. And the recreation department, which was really, to some extent driving this, switched their attentions to that and we voted significant funding to turn White Pond into something that was usable and accessible to the community. And I think it's instructive actually, and maybe we don't even want to do this, to go back and take a look at how much money was spent on that, because that was pretty significant to make it accessible, to meet the requirements, to get a bathroom down there and do all these things. And the question is, how many times does the town need to do that? So, in terms of setting our own expectations about what do we mean by recreation in the rural area, I think that's what those are some important things to close that for Branglewood as a community. I'm not even sure that that's. It might be good for us to make a start and outline that, and I think it's right. It's been part of the discussion that we've been having in the not dredge, not dam removal discussion, because it really does beg the question of, okay, what have we got and what are we gonna do with it?
It's Mark. So I just want to kind of check in again and see where folks are. I think our purpose again in this conversation was to get the information to you that you all feel like is going to be, that you need, that can be helpful to help you frame up your proposals and work groups. So obviously the status of Giroux, sort of where the town is with that, what would be needed to get more or a phase 2 for Giroux. I think we've heard about that, right? And that's all things that I think you think about in your work groups and how that might influence how you pitch your proposal back to the task force. Right. So I just want to check in, make sure that there's no other questions that folks think would really be important for you to come up with proposals, right? To understand about Giroux in terms of where the town is. And if not, I think then we can move on, but I want to still check. Okay. Great. So thank you, Carrie. Really appreciate you coming. Really important and helpful for us. And I just want to say to us, all of you, have your own takeaways from this. I think for me, just reflecting in our early conversations with all of you, almost to a person, you expressed a sense that Giroux and the pond system are intertwined, right? And wanting a kind of holistic vision. And I would encourage you all to keep that in your minds as you develop your proposals. And then also think about what Carrie told us about, what is going to be necessary. If there's going to be more done in Giroux, it's a coalition, right? A broad set of folks advocating for it. So to me, motivation for us to try to get aligned, right? To build that kind of coalition, right? Because the more we can build that, the more likely something will happen, right? So with that, we want to move to our next item on the agenda, which is work group breakout discussions. So I'm just thinking at the time, I just want to check in. I think we wanted to give folks a good amount of time on this. We have a session on the agenda for task force members' topics of interest, which is our standing discussion item that's now scheduled for 7. I just want to check, did anyone have a topic? You don't need to tell us what it is, but did anyone have something they were planning to bring into that session? I'm asking just because it might influence how long we want to spend in breakouts. Right. You did, Liz?
I think it was
Small issue? Okay, great. So I think then we can kind of give a little more time in the breakouts, right? Give people maybe not the full 45, but close to it.
At least some.
Yeah,
That would be good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So here's how this is going to work. We are going to go into our work groups, and this is both for, I want to make sure members of the public here understand how this is going to work as well, and also everyone joining online. So we have 3 different work groups that are looking at different topics or coming up with different proposals for the future of pond system. So one of these work groups is looking at dredging, and they're gonna be coming up with one or more proposals to dredge the pond that we think will advance the ball more than the proposals that have been put out there so far, hopefully. Right, we're gonna have another group looking at fleshing out a proposal for dam removal, and a third group looking at fleshing out a proposal or more than one, right, for short-term actions, right? No major action, right? Neither dam removal nor dredging. So we've been told that we can do that within this meeting. We can break into breakout groups. To make this work, we're gonna have one group stay in this room, and that's gonna be the short-term actions or the no action, right? Short-term, no action in here. We're gonna have the dredging group go into the main auditorium. And we're going to have the dam removal group go into the little room over, the area over here where there's like chairs and tables, right? The social area, whatever it's called. People who are joining online, we are going to open breakout rooms. And you can join a breakout room related to, if you're a task force member, the topic that you're in, the work group you're in. If you're a member of the public, the work group that you're interested in observing. Okay, so we'll open those breakout rooms in a minute, and you should see them, and you'll have a chance to select which breakout room you want to go into. Okay, if you are, we're going to bring laptops, okay, with us to those meetings, to the breakout rooms meeting. So people online will be kind of going with the laptop. You can join the meeting through the laptop. Okay, so that's how this is going to work. I think, why don't we plan on coming back at, we want to say 6:55? That's your, what do you guys?
Sure,
think?
that sounds right.
6:55?
6:55.
Okay, so we'll come back at 6:55. Members of the public are welcome to go observe these. And we're going to hear back from each work group when we come back, a summary of what you talked about. And that's important because we need to put that in the record to comply with open meeting law with the full group. Okay,
Very brief.
yeah, brief summary, but should cover the main points that were discussed.
Like bullet points. Like
Bullet points. Yeah, sure. Any questions for anyone in terms of how this is going to work? Again, members of the public, you can stay here or go to one of these other rooms if you want to observe that particular breakout. Okay. Same with folks online. We'll open the breakout rooms in a minute, and you can join that way. Okay. Great.
Technically, what could go wrong? Right?
Yeah, you're about to find out. Okay. So go to your breakout rooms. Malcolm, can you come here and talk to me for a second? Okay. So Bert, you want to join?
So I should join it.
Yeah, join your. Hi, so folks who are in the meeting, and not in a breakout, are any of you having trouble? You can unmute and I will, try to help you out.
Yes, I'm not sure how to get to a breakout
Wendy, I
room.
see you're unmuted. Are you okay?
No, I'm trying to figure out how do I get to a breakout room? I didn't get any kind of prompt.
So what you want to do, if you want to join one of the breakout conversations, is there's a little button on your Zoom that says breakout rooms. And that allows you to move to one of those rooms if you
All right.
want to.
Okay, well, I
You
just
want to
gotta find
continue
it.
to
Is it-
observe.
Okay, all right, maybe it's under more. Oh, no. Oh,
Great,
yeah,
I see some
found it.
folks
Great,
doing
I
that,
see it.
so great.
Thanks.
Just
Great,
click that breakout rooms button
got it. Thanks.
and that'll let you go there.
Okay.
Oh, and I realized my computer was muted, so maybe I didn't hear Wendy. Wendy, were you saying something? Okay, great. I don't know if that's Jill Corey, maybe you're having issues as well? I realized I had my volume down, so maybe I didn't hear Wendy. I hope she's okay. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna assume that folks online here, if you're not in breakout, that you're okay with that. But I'm gonna leave my audio on, so if anyone has an issue, okay, feel free to speak up. Okay, great. Can folks online hear?
We can't.
Yes, yes, I hear you.
Yes, we can.
Great,
Yeah, we can hear it.
very good.
Here comes the next.
Yeah, that's.
Amazing how time flies.
I know.
Let's break out.
Okay, how was that? Was that useful?
I think it was good. I like the opportunity to utilize this.
Oh,
It's great.
Okay, moving along. We are into task force member topics of interest.
Oh, I think we report out first.
Yes. I'm ahead. So we'd like to hear from each of the groups with a really brief report out. So that we can capture those for minutes and save you from having to write them in minutes.
We do want to report out from a brief of everything that we've talked about, or just from this particular meeting?
Just this meeting, because you presumably have, I know at least one group has taken minutes from there.
Right, they all have that.
Everybody's done it, so you don't need to do that. We only want to capture the minutes from today. The minutes, your report out from today, in order to put them in the minutes for the task force meeting to save everyone from having to do additional. So is there a group that would like to report out first?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay,
That was quick.
so. For the minutes, I would say that what we did was we reviewed a document which we will be happy to provide a copy of, which attempts to summarize the discussions that we've had in the 3 breakout sessions that have been previously held on the no action subgroup. And we addressed, what is it? Sort of 5 key areas, some key questions around the pond that are sort of driving the discussion. What the planning and goal setting options might be, the pond in context, what some new goals might be coming out of this work, and what initiatives might be put in place to try to accomplish those goals, including some of the things that we've talked about today, like the drawdown capabilities, invasive aquatic vegetation controls, and whether or not there's a need for more data collection and analysis.
Let's go next. I can go next for dam removal. Okay, dam removal. All right, so we started reviewing some updates to some conceptual maps of what things might look like in different ideas of fleshing out. And then we essentially just kind of talked about some of the questions we are still kind of stuck on. Mostly around fish passage. A lot of questions around the abutters property lines, where it ends, how they're defined. Are we looking, yeah, leave it there. We are also still stuck on sort of some of the things we're hoping the 30% report will give us, such as like the width and heights during different seasons. We talked a little bit about aquatic invasives, both what happens in the deep area, what is there anything downstream that we're gonna have to think about that will appear when we look at a stream, and then what the edges will look like of whatever brook might be there. I get all the main. Oh, okay, swim. Oh, yeah, we're talking about like swimming there. Is it okay? Is it not? So those are some of the big questions we're kind of circling around on. Yeah, great.
Okay. Okay. So we talked about, we talked about maybe a rough estimate on what the MCI property land would hold for dredge material, the area that was located near the prison in between Route 2 and the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. So we need to get really an estimate of what that would be. And so, because we're feeling that we will go with a dredge plan that was basically put together before, looking at 35,000 cubic yards, potentially a couple of other quantities. So I'll come back to this because I haven't asked for the group. So we looked at that. We want to know what volume would achieve the best result for dredging. Also looking at what would be the target depth for the pond. You know, how deep should we go so that we're sure to clear the invasives that it will take care of the invasives from returning or the other growth from returning. We did talk about the permits. And basically all but one have expired. But if we were to go back and get a bid for the 35,000 cubic yards, we feel pretty confident that that wouldn't be a lot of extra work. We talked about a fish passage area. And also about, what about recreation? If we were to dredge, we would like to incorporate some sort of dock or fishing pier that would have access from Giroux. And we also looked at potential of the Commonwealth Ave location, having better access there so that we have at least two main areas of access to the pond. That cover everything.
And I'd just like to add on the permits, because I have said that those permits were valid, because that was my assumption. What I should have done was checked them to be sure. But, you know, all except the order of conditions, they have expired. You know, it was in 2022 and 2023. And it was April of 2023, the last one expired, so it was sort of a while ago. It was long before we started talking about, you know, formation of the task force, but I misrepresented that.
So then we do have an
Just checked.
So then we do have an ask for the group. So we would like to get an estimate of how much area. But we'd like to go to EA to do this, since they're under contract with us, to find out if they can figure out for us the volume of the area that I said before, between Route 2 and Bruce Freeman Rail Trail, how much dredge could that hold? Because it has to be, we don't, the depth of that area is variable, and the dredge cannot be above the road level. So we would like to ask if that's something that we can do.
So I have a question on estimates and engineering. All of ours are gonna take engineering and estimating.
Okay.
I'm guessing some of the work that you guys are proposing is gonna take some engineering and some estimating.
Yes.
I don't know why we would do one without doing, having us all review all of, I thought we were gonna all review the schemes first.
This is just one.
I know, but I could give you one.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, it feels a little odd to me to just
Okay.
to focus on one. And pay for.
So let me just
an engineering.
add one more thing.
Sure.
Our reasoning for getting that is because we're kind of stymied. If we don't know how much dredge that area will hold, then we can't proceed with getting in with everyone else than getting an estimate with dredging, like 35,000 cubic yards or 100,000 cubic yards. Because if it doesn't go there, there's really no other place to put it unless we keep it within pond.
Yeah,
Right,
and there are other places.
right.
But I think actually that's not a proposal, they're not giving us a proposal for a final solution. They're just asking for a consultation proposal. Find out how much it is for this one piece of evidence. If there's something, Vicky, I would think that you need for consultation, we would do that as well. But I think this makes sense, because I can see where you're stymied by not being able to go any further without knowing how much that land is available and useful. Because that seems where everyone's in that, and I'm not on that committee, that seems where that's headed. I would be in favor of this personally.
So are there other groups that have also engineering questions of the same kind that Chris is describing, where it's sort of it's a consultation sort of need to know now in order to move on.
I mean, I think
We're
we're
dying
dying
for
for the
the
30%
I feel like this is the
report.
equivalent of that 30%.
Well, we don't know what's in the 30%.
Right.
We don't-
report
yeah,
yet. It
you'll-
may-
yes, you'll be getting that soon. You'll be at some
So,
point.
so will, the town has received the 30% design plans.
Okay.
Those, and are you looking for them to understand the width and depth of the channel? Because that is not going to be in the design plans.
Well, we just want to see what it was in.
Yeah,
It may
okay.
answer
So
Yeah,
10% of our questions or
Whatever,
none of
yeah.
our questions. I don't know yet.
and
There
you
are
make it back
review.
to other questions for consultation.
Yeah,
I think we ought to
at this
move.
point, we keep on being like, maybe it'll be in the 30% report, fingers crossed.
And that's gonna be coming next week. So Sammy's actually reviewing the design or the drawings now, and we'll have that done by the end of the week. And if there are changes that need to be incorporated, then we can just release those. And then the same with the design report, that should be ready next week.
Okay.
And so there'll be a little bit of time for the town to review it. So that we don't have inconsistent draft documents. floating
Yeah,
around.
absolutely, sure.
So Rachel, I'd like to, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask if we can have a motion from someone on the committee, since I can't chair. To ask the NRC, I think, or the Natural Resources staff, or whoever is holding those funds. To use those funds as consultation for us to find out how much it'll cost to use that land, or how much, or that land is usable for dredging. So can someone make that motion?
I made a motion to use, to request information from EA about how much can be dredged on the land. That the dredging committee is looking at right now.
Good, me second.
I'll make sure that-
Second. All in favor? Aye. There you have it. All right. Okay, and we'll do it if you guys need it too, of course.
Yeah, because we're trying to figure out, because one question we all have is, if we remove the dam, what is the elevation of the water?
Absolutely.
And will fish swim through that area? Like, none of us can answer that question.
Yeah, great.
And so doesn't everyone want to know if we remove the dam, what those two things are?
Yeah.
And to me, it's really
Yeah.
important to.
Yeah, it is, absolutely,
But
absolutely.
there we might ask Toby and Rachel if we could actually have a fish expert
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
come and talk.
Yes,
You're
yes.
reading our mind, it's coming up now.
Yeah.
And it's like, who seconded the motion?
It was. Yeah,
Can I just respond to a question that came up for the dam removal group in terms of the ownership of the land and parcel boundaries? And I can send this to the whole group. There's a deed that describes the Warner's Pond parcel as 77-acre Warner's Pond parcel. And it does track the parcel boundary now, that won't change. So the limits of the conservation, the 77-acre conservation parcel will remain regardless of whether or not the dam is removed. Is that?
I would like the town to check the deeds of the actual properties of current house owners. Often these situations you have, perhaps, I saw it again and again, you have one deed, you have described there.
Yeah,
And for historical purposes, suddenly you're showing us 3 properties that have a deed. And the rumor that we're looking for is, the rumor is that there are properties that says the land goes to the water line.
right.
okay.
Yeah,
Water's edge.
to the water's edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it's that there,
Yeah,
then we have conflicting deeds between what you described
yeah,
and what the homeowners have.
okay.
Yes.
That
And we
makes
have, and someone needs to go through these deeds
Want
of
to make a
all,
motion that this is something that, we can,
yeah.
I
So
was just looking at an example. of
I was looking through that.
The one I came up with is that if it says to the water's edge, that means it's to the boundary of the existing pond. And if it extends, if it says to the center of the street.
Yeah, but we have to have that clarification. I think we have, if you do a hobby legal work.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
We don't want.
right. So is that then a consideration for a motion to have town council evaluate the
Yes.
abutting residential deeds to understand?
If there's any kind of expansion of property.
Yeah.
To a future lower water's edge.
If the water's edge moves.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yes.
Does that cost us money to do that? It does. Do you need a motion then for us to do that?
Do you have a sense of how much money it costs? Just because I feel like, I know this is my group, so I feel like it's not necessarily stymieing us in the same way that the dredging committee feels stymied. So if it's like, not a lot of money, great, let's deal with this now, but if it's gonna be thousands. Yeah, then maybe it's
Yeah.
not.
Well, it's-
Again,
It's on Commonwealth Ave, it's about 11 properties that are so far going down there, something like
each
that.
one is different, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to look at 11 of them, but in the end, you will face that question no matter what.
Yeah, but it won't stymie what we propose.
Right.
Yeah, but again,
Let's get through.
I think it's important to understand is what happens. Is property expanding? Well, it also has an impact on prices. Yes. Because of the
These came up
station,
at the very first meeting, yeah, but I kind of feel like the only reason I'm pushing back is I feel like we're spending so much money without even an idea of what direction we're going in. And all of this money could be used to do what you're asking at the end of the day, or do what we're asking with the dam removal, but we're gonna say, now let's spend it on more reports and investigations and legal counsel before we know what we're doing. What if we don't move the edge of the pond? We didn't need to know the deep question. What if we do no action? We don't need
Well,
to.
here's a suggestion, since it's your subgroup that's working on this, why don't you come back after you work it out among
Yeah.
yourselves and then let us
Yeah,
know.
but in the scenario of our subgroup, it's information needed.
Oh, yeah,
In the context of the other subgroup, it's not.
right,
So her argument, and to give her a point, is I guess in the end, if you go and say we do nothing or we do dredge, then that information is not needed, but in the context of our subgroup, it's needed.
yeah, so if but you two aren't agreeing, so if you two are in the same subgroup,
Let's get to. our
you guys
subgroup.
get together, then come back to us and as a unified group, say, this is what we want. And then we can.
Let me volunteer this too. I think that when we think about what the mitigation was, is suppose we decided on an action that was gonna move the water's edge somehow. Once we decide that that's gonna be done, in the process of doing that, one of the costs is to work on all of the deeds that are affected by that, so that I think we would generally agree that the boundary doesn't really change. If that's the direction, so that just becomes one of the unknown or potentially, known unknowns about the cost of doing a project that moves the water's edge. Is that the deeds need to be renegotiated, so it's been identified, and as long as it's on that list, then we're good to go there, we don't actually need to know it right now.
So if I can just summarize, sorry, Keith,
Keith.
go ahead.
Yeah, just another known, unknown, sort of thing to consider. I'm being told by someone, who's, an engineer, that if the situation were to be that the dam were to come down, the town has to pay to have the FEMA flood map, redrawn, and that's gonna cost, present day value, an estimate that it was given to me was about $200,000. So that's a cost that needs to be associated with dam removal that we're not tracking.
What was the map?
So if I can just summarize where we're at, it's sounding to me that the group is saying that if there's information that's needed, that's stymieing the progress of the work group right now, then that's information that you want to consider having the town pay for to get it. If it's information that might not be needed right now, but probably be needed down the road, then there's a question in the air about whether that should be pushed down the road or whether it should be also put in that same category. And that's something that you will work.
A slight change on that was, okay, if it's not needed now to make the presentation, we shouldn't spend the money now. If we were to select one of these schemes that relies on that knowledge, we would then ask the town to pay for
Correct.
clarifying that knowledge.
Yeah.
But right now, we haven't selected that.
Right, and for
Correct.
your-
That makes sense.
and for your work group, your particular work group, this question is hanging.
It's not holding us
It's
up.
not holding you up, but you may have more discussions about it in the work group, about whether you want to come back
Yeah.
or not. And you'll sort that out.
But I do
So-
have a question on if all three have presented. When are we actually presenting the schemes and talking about them? Because
Well,
this is
I
reporting
think
back.
I think Toby's gonna talk about that a little bit more, but
Yeah.
So we're at like 7:15 right now, so our intention, like going forward, is how we envision this, is that when we have meetings where work groups work together here and in the meeting, that we'll have more of an opportunity to have a full discussion with everyone at the task force when you do your report out. So we kind of truncated that for today, partly because you're at the beginning still of your work group work, and also because we had a jam-packed agenda once again, and we don't want to push the time frame really late for you. So I guess one question to you is, if you want to have more of a discussion tonight, then it would mean running late, and I'm not advocating for that. If you're okay with where we're leaving this, then it just, we'll have more discussion going forward, and that will help. The work groups can feed directly into the task force during the same meeting, and that kind of just helps this process move forward.
Sorry, could I just make a response to Keith's point? This has come up at several, it's been raised by several people at different meetings. And there are specific regulations related to wetlands and dam removal, and a lot of the requirements that have been raised are actually waived around wetlands when a dam is removed. So it's not a given that that would have to be done.
Yes, because you referred to the ecological restoration.
Well, I'm specifically talking about the FEMA flood maps. Those have to be updated. Those are flood risk maps. So that's a very different analysis.
Yeah, I think I'll, I mean, it's not a discussion we need to have.
Right. They're experts.
Was there another, yeah, Bruce, did you have?
So I think what it is that I think when we're looking at the agendas moving forward, because we were so heavy on presentation on getting our questions answered around a lot of things, is really to think about how we're mapping that agenda out so that we have more time.
Yes.
To actually have these deeper discussions based on the report backs, because as we work as committees, we're gonna have more and more information and more to share. Yeah, we are gonna need more and more time.
Right.
And whether that be, okay, we start a little bit earlier, or we end a little bit later, really looking at that and making sure that we're giving, that half an hour to have that full discussion. So then we have to, each group has to think about and frame what we're gonna be talking about within that. You get feedback within a half an hour span. Yep. So we know that we need an hour and a half in every agenda, just.
That's that would be very good.
Yeah, good point.
So the one thing I would ask is that there's a discussion of the fisheries expert. This is just to clarify what the information is that you're looking for, so that we can target who we ask. And I think we've already got some names of fisheries and people from members of the group. This is on questions about fisheries ability to migrate upstream into the pond or into a stream if the dam was removed.
Or if it's not removable. I mean,
Well, it's not-
in each
either way.
So if it's fish, the dam is there, is there a fish ladder or fish passage or fish where, there's all these words that have been out there. I think there are 3 different designs. What kind of fish would go through those? And then the next one is we take the dam down and the high level is whatever, 115. And then the low level is at 113 in the summertime. What kind of fish are coming through here? And, what do we need to do to make that happen? And then in the no action scheme, what fish are currently coming through and.
Are there any, I mean, I think.
Right, or what are the options for
Okay,
adding that if that turned out to be a goal?
all right, that's helpful.
We
What would we need
also
to-
need to look at trout migration the other way.
Yes,
It's not all going upstream, so downstream.
okay. So that will be one presentation that we can focus on to try to
That would be really
get somebody scheduled for that. All right, so,
You wanna step back and I can move to the next section?
yes,
Well, just wanna, maybe, we wanna talk a little bit about next meetings, but we did have another agenda item for task force member topics of interest. So Liz, you had mentioned that you have
they
something.
were like so tiny, I feel silly now.
So one was that when I was kind of going through some dam removal stuff, I hadn't realized there was a dam removed on River Street in Acton like last September. So I don't know if that would be an interesting thing for us to look at. I drove past it, it's behind fencing, so you can't see a ton. I was like, my daughter in the car, I'm like, Lizzie, quiet. So I don't know if that's something we can visit or like hear from someone who's involved there. And then the other thing, actually, Chris, when you were reporting back on the dredging, it just triggered something. When I was doing some research, Massachusetts has apparently a lot of rapid response plans for all the aquatic invasives. So I was reading the one for the variable water milfoil, and in it, there was like a throwaway line about with dredging, sometimes you need to restock native aquatics, so that the invasives don't come back even if they're dredging. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So it's on your radar. And I'm like, I don't really know. It seems so silly, but this felt like the best place to throw it out there. You guys do.
Good.
Right. Right. Thanks, Liz. Okay, any other task force member items of interest? Anyone wants to raise? All right, great. So let's move to the next item on the agenda. So we wanted to talk. Oh, yeah.
So the Warner, the MCI engagement meeting date has been set for September 12th. And I believe it's gonna be in the hearing room, and I forget whether it's, I think it's at 6 o'clock start, but don't hold me to that. So that's a Thursday night. So hopefully that's not, I don't think we're planning to meet that evening.
Okay.
And, so anybody that wants to come and get an update on what's going on with MCI, that's the day.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark. Okay, so next agenda item, we want to talk a little bit about future meetings and other next steps. So just going to share my slide here. We gave you this little survey, so thanks so much to those who responded. We got 7 survey responses out of the task force, so it's about half of you, so take these numbers with a grain of salt. But this was just what folks are interested in. And this is on a scale of 1 to 3, kind of the average response. Like a 3 was very interested, a 1 was not interested. So you can see Giroux rated highly, we did that today. Fisheries expert also rated highly. We heard some specifics on what folks would want for that. Then you can see some of the other rankings there. And just to say, you know, some of these are rated a little lower. That doesn't mean that we won't talk about them or that we don't need to bring someone in at some point for them. It's just we're not thinking kind of as pointedly about them. But you will see there, dam removal site visits was rated pretty highly, and having some municipal representatives from other towns who've experienced dam removal or dredging or other maintenance for their ponds was rated quite highly. So we wanted to just check in with you on that, and I'll just say we feel like the municipal presentations, like that could relate to all of the work groups, right? We might want people talking about, you know, each of those. So we just wanted to kind of check in with you on that. And Bill, you had an idea about this, about how to handle that I thought you might want to share with the group.
I don't remember what it was. What are we talking about?
The idea of what work groups do that.
Oh, yes, yes. Rather than have each have, if there's something here that you think your own work group would like to have, it might be better to have them meet with you rather than have the entire group meet. That's right. I was thinking specifically, for example, we've been talking a lot about drawdown, sort of no action, whatever it was, the do nothing group. And we're actually thinking maybe having someone come in from the Harvard Bear Hill Pond Management Plan, come in and speak to us about what they're doing, managing their pond. And there might be something like that for other groups as well. That's what we're wondering.
Right. And I think just to kind of fill in a little more like discussion, right? So the idea here is a lot of interest in municipal, talking to folks from other municipalities. We would leave that to work in the first instance. So you could reach out to someone from Harvard, right? You can check someone from Acton or Plymouth and talk with them. And the planning team is happy to help make those connections for you or come up with suggestions based on kind of what we know about what's happening around the state. And then you would incorporate that into your proposal, and you'll see in the proposal form that we sent out, there's a little space that says like, who did you consult with? What did you learn? Right, you can include that information in that part of your proposal. And then if there's someone that you're like, this person really should come speak to full task force, right, come and share that with us and we can have them speak to you. But we were just thinking having like.
Be much more efficient.
Much more efficient, right? So want to just test, does that resonate with folks? I don't think we did motion on it, but just looking around the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you can.
No, no, okay. And then the other piece was, dam removal site visits. There was a lot of interest in that. So folks might recall Joe Gould, so the gentleman from DER who came. He said that he's happy to help kind of set us up or help us think about potential site visits. So we were thinking we'd go back to Joe, and basically ask him for recommendations or a list. So, and he even said that they might even be able to arrange a tour, right, which would be great. So I think.
Actually, specifically, because Liz brought that up as well, specifically, what about Acton? Was he involved in the Acton Dam, River Street
Right.
Dam?
So I'm now realizing that it's, I think I already emailed you guys about this, and I apologize for that, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Very
so,
focused on it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I've driven by there as well.
I never knew that's what it was, I
Yes.
just been like.
so we can certainly ask Joe about that. And I guess the question we wanted to put to you all is just what kinds of, Joe has a huge list, right? What should we advise Joe, like, hey, this is the kind of dam removal project the task force would be most interested in?
So like I had thrown out, it should be within a community.
Right.
One that's not out in an open field, but with a community built around it.
Yeah.
Because that's what we're facing.
And smaller scale, like, I don't think we need to see a 9-foot, you know.
Right.
removal.
I'm also
Yeah.
curious about, anything that has like the earthen embankments around it, because I feel like that's gonna be this.
There's one around it.
Has those like earthen embankments.
Earthen
Those
embankment.
would go away.
Yeah, so I'm curious, but I think it's such a weird feeling, like if I could visualize what it looked like, because like it's hard for me to look back there, I can envision a dam coming out, but I can't envision the hill being gone, that's.
It also, it should be, have been a community discussion, because one of the things is, it's like, we don't know if Acton's, it was failing,
Oh, theirs was failing.
theirs was failing.
Yeah.
Oh,
But that's
They're completely
completely
different.
different.
yeah.
Like, the meeting.
So a newer dam.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
A 200-year-old dam that was failing, it's probably not gonna teach us much.
Okay,
This makes a good point. The native, I think, embankment is on the Charles. That would be a very similar thing. It has properties, I think, around it, doesn't it? It has a park.
That hasn't been taken
not
down.
down.
Hasn't been taken
down
down.
the process, and they
Right.
actually have a plan, I can use it.
Yeah,
Oh, it's interesting.
And then they are going forward.
right.
It's just a matter of they have to have a whole community understanding, and then the park there, but they're putting a park right behind it, and they've got all
Okay.
things
Mhm.
around it. They did a lot of.
Recreation.
Are you most interested in the process? Or are you interested in what is left after what's removed?
I think
Because you
more
know,
of a
they've
slab.
got, because they've got the range of sort of the more recent versus the older. I'm not sure that the age of the dam actually changes what's
What's
left,
Right.
right? If you were interested in the process of taking it out, then the age of the dam would be interesting, but if it's really what the site looks like and what happens to the stream and water body afterwards,
I think that's the main interest on
Okay.
people.
okay.
Yeah. And then Vicky, since it was your point, that makes sense to you as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I don't want it to be like this enormous dam.
You want
Right.
to more.
Smaller scale, right, closer to, built environment, housing. right?
Village
And it
park.
would,
Right.
and,
Earthen embankments.
and,
actually, yeah.
and an impoundment on a pond versus dam on a river.
Yeah.
Because it's more like. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll go back to Joe, and you would say, and let you know. So, great, other ideas that came out, just to name them, and, we can take input on this, I think, kind of virtually, right? Someone suggested a limnologist, maybe for the dam removal work group. So I just want to say that could be for that work group, right?
Sure.
Kind of, as we've talked about,
Yes.
if it doesn't need to be for everyone, then you can talk about that. Julia, there was something you wanted to share about dewatering information, right?
Oh, so there are documents about, aquatic management, or management of aquatic invasives. And you know, so there's like a generic environmental impact report that was submitted, dewatering is in that. I just feel like dewatering has been something that this group has been talking about. I know we had Alan Dorsey here. It doesn't sound like it's, you know, a really feasible approach for the ponds here, but there's probably 3 or 4 documents that we could send around that are on dewatering, or we can put them on the website if people are.
I think groups, that are our group would be interested.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
So at the very least to the no action group, right?
Yeah.
I love that name.
So I would say-
So I like to nothing.
So many actions.
To do nothing.
Somewhere you spent the most money and the most questions.
Absolutely.
Is that stuff the other folks would be interested as well? Do you want us to send this around to the group? Okay.
And dewatering is synonymous with drawdown.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, it's drawdown, it's not dewatering. I'm sorry.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
And then,
Um,
so I would say then, can we visit a place where they're doing dredging, maintenance of their dam and pond? If we're visiting, that's a good idea. I mean, a town that's maintaining through annual dredging or every 5-year dredging, like what is
Might
it?
be worth going to, so Milford did their their dredging in 2014,
Mhm.
and what does it look like 10 years?
And what's their plan here? What are they doing? Moving forward.
Yeah,
How
I
do they
mean, I'd
feel
love
about
to
it?
see what it looks like.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, they do. And I'm
So,
curious what they think they're doing.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Are they using herbicides? Are they?
So that sounds like something for the dredging group to take on, that they could do.
Well, if we're all going to dam removal, we should all go to this one too. I mean, we're learning.
Yeah, I feel like the site visit should be kind of.
All of us, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is a specific site visit for Milford, not a consultation. Okay, that makes sense.
The Milford,
So, yeah.
just to ask, the Milford project, is that one that Joe talked about, or did that come from somebody else, just like?
No, that was, that came from Keith's presentation.
Okay,
So let's,
thanks.
I think we hear that, we'll kind of do a little poking around and see what we can come up with for potential dredging site visit as well. Then I just wanted, so Paul had to leave early. I just wanted to name, kind of, he asks us to share that he thinks, you know, we should at some point really have some dedicated time talking about recreation more broadly. This kind of cuts across all the work groups, but, you know, really what is kind of the present set of recreation? What do we as a task force consider a minimally improved set? What would be an ideal set of recreation facets for restored pond system? So I think that's definitely in our minds, the planning team, and we'll think about when that comes to might make the most sense. So the only other thing we wanted to raise with you, is just checking in on when you think the work groups, when it might make sense for kind of a report out from the work groups, on where you are. When do you think you might have a proposal, any sense of that yet, or maybe not? Still too early, but maybe at the very least, we plan on, you know, good timing for reporting out wherever you're at our next meeting. But maybe my thought at this point, in September, and maybe we'll be in a position in October where we're ready for proposals. But what is your sense as for the different work groups around and where you think you'll be?
So we have 3 schemes, kind of
Mhm.
3 ideas, and we are at a point where we would love the task force feedback on. Are these 3 schemes that everybody wants to move forward with? Because if we could really sit down to 1 or 2, it'd be better.
Can you guys prioritize them for us?
But they're so different.
Mhm.
Like one is like remove the dam and go away.
Mhm.
What does that look like? Can we kind of have an idea? And with some questions, are
Yeah.
fish gonna use it? What's the edge?
Okay.
of that?
So you really can't, you really have to read.
No, we really need you guys to
Okay,
say,
okay.
we don't think that's viable, or we don't
All
wanna
right, okay.
pursue that as a task force. Let's throw
Yeah,
the
we
middle
want
one
to put
out.
our energy in like the proposal that's the right one.
Okay,
Yeah.
then you're fairly close to being
We're
ready.
close to asking you guys to give us feedback.
So you probably like that for the next meeting?
We could.
Yeah, I think we can, I think that would be, like, I think that way we can focus our energy on one and really.
Yeah, because if the
Get into
task
the
force doesn't
detail
wanna
one.
pursue one, we should find
Mhm.
out now. This isn't our proposal, right? It's the
Sure.
task force.
And I think there's no reason why, even if one group said, hey, we want to
Yeah.
present because we want
I
this
think that's
feedback.
correct, so it's like we need the feedback and then it's not
Yeah,
necessarily
yes.
the formal proposal, but.
Right.
Yeah, so it's like an interim check-in
before you develop a final proposal. And let me just check in, are all the other work groups in a similar place?
Mark, I don't think we're there
I
yet.
don't think we're there yet, but I could see if I could meeting after next.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, and how about the dredging group?
No, we need to find out that.
You need that data.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll see when then that'll be available. Okay, so that's helpful just to get a check-in terms of where groups are, and I think we'll kind of mull this over as a planning team and think about how we want to structure report outs for the next meeting.
Well, since,
Anyway.
Yeah. No.
Exactly, yeah. But I think we
Yeah.
should all
I think-
update at the next one. You guys should have
Yeah.
longer time to present, but then everyone should update as well. So
Yeah, let's
see you.
where we're at.
so we can all, let me make this clear though, that you are ready to prepare 3 proposals in front of us, though.
Yeah.
I'd like
Let's
to-
do that. Let's
Yeah,
do
we
that.
are
Then on
doing
that first
meeting,
September, we'll
yeah,
put some extra time for that group.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Move it along.
Yeah. Great. We don't need to have groups presenting in the same meeting. That's fine.
Yeah, we'll update.
Well, update, the groups will update.
Other groups will update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I like that.
Great.
Good.
Okay, so great, we'll head to public comment in a second, just to say next meeting is August 13th.
No, that's today.
That's today. September something.
We're gonna need to.
I'll get you the date in a second, but
The 10th, September 10th?
September 10th sounds right, yeah. We're gonna take feedback on what you all think about the venue, okay? So just stay tuned for that, on another meeting summary form. I think that's it for now, for next steps. I'm gonna hand it now to unless there are other burning issues, I can hand it to our co-chairs to get us into public comment. So thanks, everyone.
Is that it? Yes, it's September 10th, just making sure.
September 10th. I don't have no idea.
All right, let me,
I had it down originally and then.
I think that was one of the original dates, but we might have.
September 26th.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
That's a long
Can't be the
time
next
off.
one.
Yeah, I had,
We
I have a blue set.
I think it's the whole date.
Okay.
We'll all be
Okay.
presenting by that.
Yeah, so we have a, good time now for vacation and such. That does seem like quite a long
Yeah.
break.
September 10th and then
September 10th.
then there was the later ones.
Yeah.
2 in September.
I have 2 in
One
September,
in October.
Wait, what's the
One in
second
November.
September, please? 26.
26.
Six,
I don't-
Thursday.
But I
Yeah,
don't-
they keep moving around.
Yeah, they did keep moving around. I think we canceled the September 10th one for
I
some
thought we
reason.
did.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
I'm hearing two things here. I think September 26th, I think is what we've scheduled, but I also think it's a long time in the future and probably too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too far.
That's
So I'm thinking, let's provisionally, we'll take a look at our records, but I think, September 10th seems to me.
Why was it canceled? to
I don't know.
September?
I just knew everyone had one.
Oh, a bunch of stuff.
There's a lot of previous stuff, but.
It might have just, maybe I just disappeared from my calendar for some reason. Yeah. but-
I have it on mine, but
So,
It's a lot, yeah.
Sent out and posted. Actually, the next coming meetings.
yeah.
yeah,
We'll take. a
we'll
look.
take a look.
Yeah.
I think September 10th seems right to me. Yeah,
I remember
I
it's still posted in the Warner's Pond Task Force website.
it is September 10th. Okay, so September
Yeah, I
10th, I'm
remember.
sorry, I'm wrong. Yeah, I'm wrong. September 10th.
All right, September 10th.
Great.
And you guys, you ready to prepare your, will you be
Yeah,
ready?
we're ready, we're ready.
Okay.
I have to leave, sorry.
I'm on a plane coming back. It's supposed to.
All right, so, we can
So,
do,
Are the meetings that are on the website today correct? Because
September
last
10th.
time they were not. So I just want to make sure, because I'm gonna put them in my calendar. This September 10th was not on my calendar and I made another appointment and I'm gonna have to move that now.
okay.
Last time we looked, those meetings were incorrect.
I don't think they were incorrect, Vicky. I think we added some.
We-
I don't think
Yeah, I
we
think I
added
just-
incorrect meetings on
I think I just checked this morning, Vicky. I could be wrong. In fact, that's how I downloaded it.
Okay. Good, if they're correct on the
September
website. then they're
10th
all
is
in.
added, so all the meetings, all these new meetings were added, is
Yeah, I'm looking at the website now.
They're
September
on-
10th is
Peter's
right,
agenda.
Okay.
26th is correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
29th of October.
October 10th is correct, 29th of October is correct. November 13th is correct. And then December 5th is correct.
And November 13th is a Wednesday.
November 13th is a
It's a
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
yes. So that's important, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry,
Thank
sorry
you.
for confusing everything with my calendar, apologies. All right.
We ready?
Yeah.
I think we're done, and now I think we're opening up for public comment, and everyone knows, I think, the rules. Be respectful in your comments, avoid personal attacks, and please, do as we do, keep everything to 2 minutes. Or at least you should keep it to 2 minutes. So I open up the public comments. Any comments? Yes.
I'll be respectful to say I waited 2.5 hours and about 6 months to talk about Jerome Park. I'll be respectful, just name and address for the record.
Yes.
Mary Weinberg, Hillside Avenue in West Concord. I'll be respectful to say that 2.5 minutes is not enough, it's not fair. Considering this scope of this project and for a citizen to come here and to talk. I was gonna talk because town manager was here, but unfortunately, there were no public comments after what she had to say. And I've been waiting a month, they have put it off, so that's a decision from now on that we come and at least open it up. Does anybody want to comment on what the town manager said? I had a lot to say. I am not going to say that. What I'm going to say is, I've been here 45 years, and when I moved here, responsible for a lot of the stuff in West Concord, the design and everything, received awards for it. When I first got involved, I was young, in my late 30s. I was told by the older people, know everything about the whole town before you get involved, know the history. So I went to every department, I researched, I read for 2 months, everything about everything that's been written about West Concord. And in 1983, there was a wonderful committee, Carol Dwyer was on it. She was a graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Landscape Design. They were wonderful people. They wrote, I have it, a report this thick about all of West Concord Village. From that, they got a matrix of all the things that had to be done. Now, one of these things, I hope that you will, I'd be glad to, if you pay for it, I'll make copies of it. In it was, make use of all the waterways, everything, mow down the lawns so we can see it. They did not mention Warner's Pond. Why? Because it was a given. It was a given. And there's a book that I had on my bookshelf. It's called Conscious Stillness. By 2 very well naturalists, by Harper and Row. In it, on the inside, there are, they navigated the waters that Thoreau navigated. There are 14 great ponds in this area. Warner's Pond is one of them. There's a few pages on Warner's Pond. Thoreau picked up the pails and navigated them down the waterways. They talked about the parties they had, the whole history. I don't hear anybody talking about the history, and I think this is really important. I think that talking about Warner's Pond, this is what I was told, before you do anything, learn the history of the town. Because I mentioned this to somebody who's a big Thoreauvian, they said, you should go to Thoreau Society. The fact that Thoreau was involved with this pond, the fact that it had so much importance to West Concord was the industrial area. This is history, and you know, guys, if this had happened on any other side of on the other side of town with the bridge, history comes first. And also people come first. That pond, when I moved here, all the people who were 80 and 90 who had remembered back the stories, and it's in that book too, of all the things that happened with boating and recreation and parties on the island. It's in that book. I really, really hope that this committee, I don't know if you did do the research of everything that's been written about West Concord, what is supposed to be done, what we want from it. Nothing has changed since that report in 1983. And even more so, West Concord is becoming more denser. We do not have apartment buildings. Even more so, this water is valuable. It is not White Pond. I used to go to White Pond. It is not White. It is not the Great Meadows. It is Warner's Pond. And if you take my tour, you'll go down there. I don't know the last time any of you were down there. Have any of you been down there in the last 2 months or 3 months? It's a disaster. It's a disaster, okay? But there are things we can do, but I'm gonna stick to Warner's Pond, okay? I really would feel better if every one of you said they saw the 1983 book, they realized what this means to the whole town and West Concord. I do not hear that talk at all from the beginning when I heard about this, so I get very emotional, as you can see, but I'm still living, so obviously emotion doesn't kill you, because I'm kind of behaving. Okay.
Thank you, thank you. Anyone else? Miguel? Yeah, good, thank you, Miguel.
Public comment. Anyways, Miguel Tavari, 255 Commonwealth Ave. Actually, my first comment, just two comments, is actually about public comments. This committee is supposed to try to receive robust community input, quote from the charter. Did we ever consider maybe doing public comments at the beginning of this meeting? So I know some committees do, others do not, but it might be something to consider. Also, too, you mentioned, Paul had mentioned, or after he left, about recreation, and then Terry was talking, kind of pushing back when Vicky was talking about the phase two and stuff, you know, there's really not that much money, this and this, and kind of we want to remind everybody back to when we're talking about envision, and all those discussions and stuff, and, you know, let's come to village, so areas. We've got MCI coming in, we've got, you know, Baker Ave, we've got Commonwealth Ave, you know, so, you know, we spent $5 million on that park. You know, so it's like, let's not get cheap on it now, you know, so there are things to do with possible boardwalks to down to the fishing piers and stuff, so I guess I want to put that in perspective. After she had mentioned it. And. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Well, Chris, back to you.
All right, well, then I will, with no further business, I will close the meeting at 7:41. 45, I think.